A lot of people don't start writing content because they're overthinking it. They're thinking about how to perfect it and make it as best as possible. And while there is definitely a time and place for that, I always am reminded, and I always remind people that you shouldn't let the perfect get in the way of the possible. So you want to create content, you just want to go ahead and get started with your writing and creating that content. Don't feel like it has to be the absolute best.
You're an entrepreneur, and you make vital decisions that hopefully blossom into a business. You're the savvy, out-of-the-box risk taker who believes wholeheartedly in the process of innovation. Innovation that will change the world. This is CEO Chat with Gresham Harkless, and you're about to embark on a journey through the awesome world of business. Gresham is the epitome of drive and desire as he works to help support small businesses and entrepreneurship. And you're about to learn from this entrepreneur how you can improve your odds of success in the business world. Welcoming the host of CEO Chat, here's Gresham Harkless.
Hello. This is Gresham Harkless from CEO Chat, powered by CBNation.co and Blue 16 Media, your choice for all your website design, SEO, and digital marketing needs. And this is talk number 9 in a series that will become the You Are a Media Company course. And this is the second of 4 that will speak specifically about the blog and why it's important. Last chat, I spoke about the history of the blog, how you would want to maybe lay out your blog, why people even blog, especially from a entrepreneur and business owner standpoint, and some examples of how specifically you might be able to be effective as an entrepreneur and business owner. So this chat, I'm actually going to focus on what I like to call your tips or best practices for blogging. So if you're thinking about blogging, especially as like an entrepreneur and business owner, and thinking from that perspective, not just blogging for the sake of it, these are maybe some tips, practices, things you can consider when you're creating your blog. So just to get started with everything, as I did in the website talks that I gave, I want to start out with a definition of what exactly a blog is. A blog, shortening of weblog, is an online journal or informational website displaying information in the reverse chronological order, with the latest post appearing first. It is a platform where a writer or even a group of writers share their views on an individual subject. And again, if you have not had the opportunity to really kind of learn what a blog is, see what a blog is, I have created a Start a Business blog course, which is specifically for entrepreneurs and business owners, and you'll find the details for that in the show notes. But you also might want to go check out chat number 70, because that was the talk that actually spoke a little bit more in depth about what exactly a blog is. So if that's not familiar to you, definitely make sure to go check it out, because I'm just going to be going and speaking a lot more about very specific ways that you can leverage your blog. So you might want to have that foundation before you listen to this chat. So I basically have 16 ways on how you can be very effective with your blog. And the first and very most important thing, as you've heard consistently with these You Are a Media Company course chats, is you want to try to be strategic and understand and be very clear about why you're blogging and what value you're bringing to your blog and to your potential readers or people that are taking in your content. So that's one of the biggest things that you want to try to keep in mind and keep at the forefront for every time you create a blog post. What purpose and what reason are you creating these posts, and why are you creating this content? And I have some potential examples. I gave some potential examples on why people can blog in the previous chat, but they can be everything from SEO, so that you can show up in search engines. It might be that you're interviewing people, so maybe you're using it to build relationships and to showcase some of your referral partners or people that you know well. It might be that you just want to use your blog to kind of journal and like go through different ideas and different concepts that you have. And I think especially for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that aren't familiar with blogging, they automatically think of it as a old school journal or like a diary, so to speak. But keep in mind that could be very, very useful, especially if you're trying to come up with ideas and different concepts. And you want to try to figure out exactly how to leverage those different ideas on a very low cost opportunity, which is just creating a blog. And then maybe you can get feedback from people, so you don't have to create a different aspect of your business. You actually test it out first through like a blog post. The next thing is to increase traffic. It goes kind of hand in hand with SEO, but also know that it can, and if it is value that you're bringing to your target market, you are able to use it as a way to increase traffic. And the next thing is maybe you want to drive some type of downloads or some type of content for people that are interested in the information that you have on your website. And specifically, I'm talking about like an ebook, or maybe there's a course that you have that you're offering for free. So you want to use and have that content drive people to your site where they can download a specific ebook or something along those lines. And then what I really think is probably the biggest benefit for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and CEOs is this idea of authority building, where you're creating content so that you're positioning yourself as the expert for whatever it is that you're trying to provide as a product or a service. So if you have a tremendous amount of content around this specific topic, when you're thinking about creating a blog and creating content, then that's going to do a great job of you doing that. So that's just kind of number one, and different ideas that you might have for how to kind of leverage that. But keep in mind, again, you want to make sure that you're strategic and you understand exactly why you're blogging, what value you're bringing. So one of the biggest things that you want to do on every blog post that you have is to have a call to action at the end of every single post. So when people go to your posts and they read all the great content that you have, what you want them to do is be able to take action immediately after they're reading whatever it is that you're doing. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how the blog itself has kind of evolved in one of these points, but you just want to try to make sure that you have a call to action at the end of the post. So if they're reading the content that you have, or maybe you've embedded an audio or visual file on the actual blog post that you have, that people have the opportunity to take some type of action. It might be joining an email list, it might be purchasing your services, just whatever, setting up a consultation. You want to think about all those things that you can kind of do. The next thing that you want to do, which is number 3, is consider SEO. I'm going to talk a lot more about SEO. I've already brought this up twice. So blogging and SEO really kind of are very strongly connected. One of the best platforms, in my opinion, as you heard in previous chats, is to create a site, to create a blog, is WordPress. And WordPress is very strong in SEO. So if you're trying to show up in search engines, you definitely want to consider, creating content, creating blog posts as a way for you to hopefully increase your overall ranking for specific keywords. And understand that it's not just creating a blog and just kind of going from there on the back end of your site. And I'm going to talk more about this during the SEO chats, but there is something called a title tag, a meta description, and you can even name images. There's a lot of different things that you can do that kind of help you out from an SEO standpoint. But the big thing to keep in mind is that you want to even consider, you want to understand that that is an opportunity that you can take advantage of when you're creating blog posts. So if you're trying to show up as the number one physical therapist in Northern Virginia or in California, you want to try to keep that in mind as a potential opportunity and potential result of you creating consistent content and creating blogs. So the next thing that you really want to try to keep in mind is you don't want to get lost in stats and numbers and shares. And not to say those things are not of any importance, but you want to make sure that you're effective in providing value. I think one of the biggest kind of landmines, I guess you can say, that a lot of people that create blogs and content is that they forget that it's about creating value and providing value, not necessarily looking at the number of people that are going to your site or the number of people that are sharing. Now, that definitely is important, don't get me wrong, but I would always say look for value and provide value first, and then everything should follow a little bit better after that. So that's a really big aspect that you want to try to keep in mind. So the next thing is being consistent. So a lot of times when people decide that they want to start a blog, or they hear that they should start a blog, they say that they don't want to write every single day, or they don't want to write every single week. But I think the biggest thing that you want to keep in mind, especially as an entrepreneur and business owner, you're leveraging and balancing a bunch of different things, trying to leverage as much as you can so that you can be as effective and efficient. Understand that being consistent is more important than the amount of times that you blog and create content. So understanding that, you keep in mind that as you create content, if you create content and you create 6 pieces of content, you don't have to necessarily write those every single week and publish those every single week. Often many of the ways that you create blogs, including like WordPress and Squarespace and Weebly and a lot of different platforms like that, you can actually schedule your posts in advance. So you don't have to create that post and then that's where and when you have to actually publish it. You can schedule those things and those blog posts in advance. So keep in mind, being consistent is just kind of like one of the biggest things that you want to try to do and take advantage of. So it's huge. The next thing, number 6, is just get started writing. I think that that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give to anybody that's thinking about creating a blog. Obviously, if you're bringing on an agency or you have an agency, just start thinking about ideas and content of what you want to create. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the long tail and why that's important, but just keep in mind that a lot of people don't start writing content because they're overthinking it. They're thinking about how to perfect it and make it as best as possible. And while there is definitely a time and place for that, I always am reminded, and I always remind people that you shouldn't let the perfect get in the way of the possible. So you want to create content, you just want to go ahead and get started with your writing and creating that content. Don't feel like it has to be the absolute best content, because you can always go back and edit it. You can always evolve and create different parts or different aspects of that content to kind of build upon that. So keep that in mind. Don't let the perfect get in the way of the possible. Just start writing and go after it. Number 7, make it shareable via social media. Again, a lot of it's going to depend on your target market, as all these points will. But I think one of the biggest kind of hangups that I see from a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and people that create blogs is that they don't make it easily shareable. And that could be as simple as having share buttons on the page. And it can also be where you have share buttons on the page. If you have them at the very top of the post, then people can share immediately once they get to the post. Whereas if you have it at the very bottom, you have to depend on somebody to actually go through your entire blog post and then say, hey, this was interesting, let me share. This is another reason that a lot of people will mix call to actions in different aspects of the post. So you'll also see different things that are linked. So for example, if you're writing a blog post and somehow you mention that there's a course that's out there that you can leverage and take advantage of, maybe you have that course hyperlinked through that content and that those words that you have that you've written in the blog, so that people can take action automatically there, so they don't have to finish the post and scroll all the way down to actually see that. So it's one of the things that you want to try to kind of use and leverage as much as possible, but keep in mind that having the share icons, to the top or to the left where they're floating is another good way that you will entice and remind people that they want to share. And you can also have that as maybe one of your call to actions. Did you love this post? Would love if you share this via your social media sites, Twitter, LinkedIn, maybe Facebook. Just make it easy for people to be able to share and talk about all the great things that you've written about. Number 8, design is important. So really what you want to try to keep in mind is how your blog looks is something that's going to play a part. Again, you always want to make sure that you're paying attention to your audience. You're keeping your audience in mind when you're creating your blog, and you're creating each blog post and creating the overall and building the overall design of the website. So this is just one specific example. If you have an older target market, maybe having really small text may not be something that's really good for your specific target market. So maybe you want to increase that size of the text, or maybe if you're creating content for people with disabilities, you want to have the ability for people to go and click a button to increase the size. Or maybe it's for people that are speaking a different language. Maybe you have a way for you to click a button and translate. So that's where a lot of people aren't really thinking about the overall design. You think about colors, you think about the way something loads up. And again, that is definitely important, but you just want to try to keep in mind that design is something that you want to try to keep in mind. But again, going back to the point that I mentioned before, not number 6, not just in the aspect of creating blog posts, don't let the perfect get in the way of the possible. So if you can get started with creating a blog and you want to evolve and transition your blog as you get more and more confident in doing it and more confident in creating it, by all means, you can definitely do that. So keep in mind that design is important. And also keep in mind, this is and kind of plays to the evolution of the blog. A blog is not simply just words on a blog post or on a page or on a screen. It really has evolved to where a blog can be the embedding of a video, a YouTube video that you have. It can be the embedding of an audio file from a podcast that you have. It can be adding a GIF file to the site. It can be adding a gallery of images. So keep in mind that also from a design standpoint, I'm talking about the overall blog, but also within the blog, how can you make your content as engaging as possible? Especially if you're creating long form content. And if you don't know what long form content is, it's kind of going out of style, so to speak, but it's not out of style for those people that are looking for really deep content about a subject they're really interested in and they value tremendously. So understand like a way that you can do from a quote unquote design standpoint and a user experience standpoint is rather than just having a long form blog post that has nothing but content there, maybe you do add in a image, maybe you do add in a video, maybe you do add in a funny GIF, maybe you do add a meme in the middle of your blog post. So it just again depends on your target market, but keep in mind that the design, while it talks about the overall blog as a whole and the theme that you're using and how it's designed and elements that are there, keep in mind it also is very important to understand that from an actual blog post. So number 9, speed kills. When I used to play Madden all the time, they would always say that for whoever was one of the fastest people on the game. But keep in mind, speed is extremely important. I'm going to talk about it a lot more. I talked about it a little bit from the website design standpoint. Is definitely something that's important from an SEO perspective. But keep in mind that how fast your website loads is very, very important. If you are a photographer, if you have really high quality images, take the extra time to compress your images so that it loads faster than it would, because that goes back to user experience. It ties in with number 8, design. So you definitely want to try to keep that in mind. Try to make your website as light and quick as possible. And sometimes when figuring out what theme you're going to use, that plays a big factor, because if you use the wrong theme that is really heavy and has a lot of bloatware, you're not going to have the opportunity to have a light speed website. And adding images and adding things like that do play a factor in that. So you want to try to use those sparingly, and when you do use them, make sure that you're optimizing them as best as possible. So mobile. If you haven't heard, mobile devices are on the rise, and they will only continue to be on the rise. People are leveraging and using mobile devices at a ever increasing rate. So as a blogger and somebody that's creating content, you want to try to keep that in mind. And I would argue that's definitely one of the factors as far as people not taking in very deep and long content either, is because they're taking in that content from their mobile device, and from their mobile device it needs to be a lot faster, it needs to be a lot more succinct and concise with the information that you're providing. So you want to try to keep that in mind from a lot of different factors. Keep it in mind from, like I mentioned before, number 9, speed. How fast is this going to load on somebody's mobile device? Not just thinking about their computer. How does it look on their mobile device? Number 8, you're thinking about it from a design standpoint. If somebody's looking at it on their mobile device, how does it show up? How does it lay out? Does the image go to the far right where nobody can see it? Does the image fall under the text rather than on top of the text like you imagine it doing? So keeping in mind all those different design elements, because if your target market is going to be consuming this content from a mobile device, it is extremely important to do that, especially as you're hoping to have people share your content quickly and easily. You want to make sure that you do that as best as possible. So that's huge. Number 11, interact with others and make sure you interact in the comments. One of the most attractive things about the blog is the comments section. The whole entire purpose of a blog for most people is really to engage with your readers or your listeners or people that visit your site. That's the idea. So make sure that you're having that conversation. Make sure that you are responding to people just like you would if you were creating something on Instagram or on social media. Keep in mind, that's what makes the blog function, and that's what makes the blog work. And there's a lot of different ways that you can also take your blog and the comments within your blog and actually have them be integrated with a platform like Facebook, where people can log in from Facebook and they can interact directly on there. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but keep in mind that's really probably one of the unique things about the blog and why it is so much different than like a page on your website, is that you have that opportunity to have conversations. You have that opportunity to engage, and keep in mind that's just kind of how you do it. Number 12, consider revenue. And the reason I say consider revenue is because a lot of people have this vision of creating a blog post so that they can make a lot of money. They hear a lot of bloggers, they hear a lot of maybe even business bloggers that create content in order to do that. And going back to number 1, where I talked about all the different aspects of and reasons for creating a blog, and even in chat number 70, you want to try to keep that in mind, as that might also be an alternative for you, or a way that you are able to do that if you're able to create quality content and drive revenue. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. The Start a Business blog course that I have that's completely free has a lot of content related to that, but everything from affiliate links, ads, maybe you're using it to sell or showcase your products and services. A lot of different things that you can do overall. But you just want to keep in mind that you want to consider revenue. Consider like why you're doing that blog. Are you trying to drive people towards your service-based business? Maybe you're doing it from that standpoint. So keep that in mind. Next up is number 13, join a community. Especially from the blogosphere, so to speak. There's a lot of different opportunities for you to join groups, and that could be everything from meetup groups to Facebook groups to LinkedIn groups, in order for you to make sure that you're not alone when you're blogging and creating content. You can do, like I mentioned, you can do this online, you can do this face to face, but as you're blogging and creating this content, especially if you can find and join communities that are specifically related and looking at it from an entrepreneur and business standpoint, not just creating blogs, but maybe creating it to offset or add to your services that you provide, that's a really good opportunity. So make sure you join those communities. They're also really vital and really huge in as far as you being able to share out your content and get people to interact and engage with your content. And once you have regular people that do that, then you will have opportunity to continue to grow and grow and grow, get more traffic, and maybe generate more revenue, or maybe have another stream of revenue that you add on to your existing business. So keep that in mind. Number 14, leverage online and offline resources to repurpose and repost. There's a blog post that's going to be in the show notes that specifically shows you kind of a way in which you can create a blog post and you can reshare it on different social media sites or different sites, not just as a shareable piece of content, but actually not the native content, but the content itself with a link going back to your blog post. So that could be on Facebook, that could be on LinkedIn. There's a specific blogging platform called Medium, if you have not heard of it. That's another way for you to do it as well too. But the concept behind it is really to create content and go to where people are spending time, and then have that content be available there. I actually had a client that I spoke with a few days ago, and he said that he heard that you don't want to take your blog post and repost it on these different sites. And natively, probably from a very specific standpoint, you don't. You want to try to manage and control as much of the content and information that you have and that you create. However, you can't fight the fact that people are spending time natively on these different sites. So you must leverage, you must take advantage of that. If your target market is spending time on LinkedIn, if your target market is spending time on Instagram, if your target market is spending time on Facebook, you have to be where those people are to hopefully maybe drive them back to your site or drive them to wherever you want them to go, depending on your goal. So make sure that you're using and leveraging this ability to kind of repost and repurpose your content. Number 15, think about the long tail. And if you don't know what the long tail is, again, as always, I have another blog post that you can check out. But the long tail is essentially the concept where people are searching not very specifically for keywords, but they're searching in sentences. They're searching sometimes maybe in paragraphs is the way it's going. They're also searching from a voice standpoint. So you really want to try to keep in mind like what the long tail is. And the reason that's important for you as a blogger and as a business blogger is because those questions that your clients are asking you, what is the best stretch to do before I go to yoga? What is the worst food to eat if I want to make sure that I don't have cavities? What are the best examples of fruits that I can eat so that I can run this marathon? These are questions that you might get from clients. So understand these questions are great opportunities to create blog posts. You have these clients asking these questions. You take these questions, you make them essentially the subject of your blog post, and you create content from that standpoint. So that when people, especially if they're near you, and as far as like location, and I don't mean physically near you, I mean like maybe within your city or your locality, are searching for these specific questions, maybe your blog post is going to have the opportunity to show if it's optimized well. So you really want to try to keep those things in mind if you're getting the traffic and you're getting that information, that you have that opportunity to do that as well. So think about the long tail. There's a huge book about the long tail, and it was written years ago, well ahead of its time, but definitely check out the blog post as well too that's in the show notes, which basically talks about how Netflix and blogging go hand in hand. And last but not least, number 16, innovate and be creative. You have an opportunity to use and leverage your blog post for many different things. You are the entrepreneur and business owner. You're the captain of your ship, as you know. But don't be afraid to think outside of the box. Don't be afraid to do things in a different or untraditional type of way. Don't be afraid when everybody is creating short snippets and short content to go the exact opposite way and create long form content. That's one of the reasons that some of these platforms, some of these media sites, some of these blogs are getting so much traffic and so much opportunity, because people are craving deeper content. People are craving more content. So you want to make sure that you're leveraging that and you're taking advantage of that, and you're not always doing what everybody else is doing. You're trying to be ahead of the competition. So don't be afraid to innovate and be creative. And definitely, like I mentioned before, don't also be afraid or don't be scared about using your blog as a way for you to think through ideas. What I mean by that, if you've ever read the book, The Lean Startup, you will see that there's something called an MVP, or a minimum viable product. The idea behind it is that you create something very quickly and simply and easily so that you can test out the idea to understand if that idea has legs in which you can invest more time, resources, money, what have you. So understand that blog posts can be a way for you to do that. Are you thinking of doing something for your clients? Are you thinking of creating or maybe you're thinking of having a client appreciation day, or maybe it's a client appreciation card, and you create this blog post and you talk about like all the benefits of it. And maybe instead of creating that content and going forth and doing it prior to actually testing it out, you take that and you share it out through your social media platforms, or maybe you email it to your people that are on your list, that are the people that open up your blog post the most, and you ask them in the comments or your call to action at the end of the blog post is, what do you think about this? Would you be interested in this? Maybe you don't necessarily say you're going to do it yourself. Maybe you say, hey, I know in another country or another part of the country, this company did X, Y, and Z. What do you guys think about that? And maybe they'll come in and said, I would love for somebody to do that. I would definitely pay twice as much if this company that I went to, or if this gym that I went to did something like that. If they had a client appreciation day every 6 months or every month, I would love to do that. I would pay twice as much to do that. Then all of a sudden, rather than you figuring out and planning and creating that event, you have tested it out. You understand that people are interested in it. And now you also have people to go to say that, hey, this is the day we're having the event. I know you were interested. We're doing this. Please sign up. And all of a sudden you have that kind of idea, which has kind of manifested itself into an actual way that you can not only generate additional revenue, but also keep the clients that you've been working with in the past. So, that's basically it. As I mentioned, those are 16 kind of tips or pieces of advice that I would give to anybody that's considering business blogging. Please definitely check out the Start a Business Blog course. Check out the other blog posts that I mentioned in the comments. This is Gresham signing off. Be sure to sign up when the course goes live at youramedia.company. And I will talk to you next week. We will have an interview. And in 2 weeks, I'll be talking about blogging again. So thanks, signing off, and I will talk to you soon.